Good. Hi, everyone. I'm Ranger Braden.
And I'm Ranger Elise.
And today we have a special presentation of winter animal adaptations. So as we talk today, we're going to go over a variety of animals that live in Allegheny County in Pennsylvania and what they do to adapt to the winter time. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type them into the comment section, and then we'll go through and answer everyone that we have at the end of the presentation. So animals and people are animals, and we all go through different changes in the wintertime. As you can see, I have my gloves on, my wool hat, my jacket on, because it's cold outside today. It's about 33 degrees, so I'm adapting to the winter weather. We also do other things like spend more time inside or enjoy winter sports, just a variety of different things in the wintertime to help us cope with the cold temperatures. Wild animals do the same thing. They might move their home to a warmer climate. They might go through different changes to help them survive the cold temperatures, or they may even go into a period of dormancy and we won't see them until the springtime. So Elise is going to start out and tell us about our first winter animal today.
So the first animal that I'm going to show you is this animal right here. And I'm going to give everybody a second to see if you can take a guess what kind of animal you think this is. So maybe look at its color or its size, its body shape. So this animal is a beaver, and beavers are active in our area throughout the winter. So they're one of the animals that tough it out or adapt to the winter conditions. And the beavers are semi-aquatic. Their lives in the water and part of their lives on land. And they have some really unique adaptations that help them with that, but also help them when they are outside in the winter. So the main adaptation is their fur. They actually have 2 layers of fur. So they have a soft under fur that is really, really warm and acts like a down coat that keeps them warm in the water in the winter. And then they have these long hairs on top that are called guard hairs. And the beaver produces an oil that it spreads over these guard hairs, and it basically makes the beaver waterproof. And in the winter, the beaver grows a thicker and even warmer coat to withstand those cold temperatures. And we have a beaver skull here today as well. And the beaver's teeth are really flat in the back and sharp in the front so that they can chew on or cut down or eat trees. Now they don't eat an entire tree. They like to eat the soft inner layer under the bark. So if you've ever broken a twig and seen the green layer, that's the layer that the beavers like to eat, and they'll chew the bark off to get to that layer. But they'll use the sticks in the trees to help them build their lodges and their dams. So beavers will build a beaver dam to create a pond, and then build their lodge, which is their home, in the pond. The entrance to the lodge is under the water so that they can avoid predators. And in the winter, beavers will create a food cache or a storage spot where they will have the different sticks and trees so that they can get to their food in the winter without having to leave the protection of their lodge. So Ranger Braden is going to go ahead and share our next animal with you.
Okay, here is our next animal. Take a good look at it. And if you think you know what it is, feel free to type that in the comments too. This is very similar to the animal that Ranger Elise just showed you. And this isn't a baby beaver, but this is a muskrat. A muskrat is another larger, although not as big as the beaver, semi-aquatic rodent. You can find them in waterways all throughout Allegheny County in Pennsylvania. A lot of the time we'll find them in ponds. And one of the easy ways to identify where the muskrat lives is a little different than the beaver. You might see dams or lodges where a beaver is making its home, but muskrats burrow into the banks of ponds or into the banks of streams and rivers and create a burrow underground, and the entrance can be submerged completely underwater where they call home. Now, muskrats, just like beavers, have similar skulls and teeth, just like all rodents. They have these elongated, kind of chiseled teeth in the front that continue to grow and wear down as they eat. Muskrats, however, they like to eat more plants, grasses, roots, and tubers, and submerged and emergent vegetation around the ponds and streams. Now, just like beavers, they've adapted in a special way. They too have multiple layers of fur. They have that sort of really soft under fur and then the long guard hairs to help protect them from the cold water, not only in the winter, but year round. Muskrats, they don't build a lodge that they live in the wintertime. They spend almost the entire winter underwater and inside their burrows. So they'll stay inside their burrows, group together to keep warm, and stay awake throughout the entire wintertime, often going out and feeding on underwater vegetation or roots that are growing in the ground, kind of burrowing down and pulling that stuff out that they can eat. So not coming out of the water and out onto land to look for food unless it does get warm enough out for them to leave. The neat thing about a muskrat is, most people don't realize this, they do actually build a structure in marshier lands. So not with wood and sticks like a beaver lodge, but they'll use vegetation to make sort of a dome structure that they can go inside. And oftentimes they can take shelter in there in the winter as well. So here's a good look at what an actual muskrat looks like. You can see very similar to the beaver. Big difference is they're a lot smaller, and they have this very long rodent-like tail as opposed to the big flat tail that the beaver has. So Ranger Elise is going to show you our next winter animal.
So I have our next animal right here. And same thing, I'm going to give you a second to see if you can guess what kind of animal this is. It's a pretty common one in our area. You might look at its tail and be able to tell, or maybe its face can help you figure it out. But this is a raccoon. So I have a picture of a raccoon as well. And like I said, raccoons are pretty common in our area. And raccoons do something kind of unique in the winter time. So they are awake in the winter and they can go out and look for food. But if the temperature gets cold enough, they can enter something that is called torpor. So you may have heard about hibernation. Torpor is kind of a half hibernation state. So they're not as dormant as an animal would be in hibernation, but they can still slow their body down, their heartbeat down, their temperature down. But if it warms up, then they will be out looking for food, so they can be awake in the winter. And we have the raccoon's skull right here. And the raccoon's teeth are actually pretty similar to our teeth because they are omnivores, which means they eat plants and meat similar to us. And raccoons are known for being opportunistic eaters. So they will basically eat anything that they can come across, which we probably know if you've ever had a raccoon get into your garbage. But this is especially true in the wintertime, whenever food is a little bit more scarce. They will basically eat anything that they can find. So Ranger Braden is going to go ahead and show you our next animal.
So our next animal is one of Pennsylvania's largest mammals. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen these in the wild before around Pennsylvania, but we actually do have a fairly good amount of these. I'll give you a look at the skull, too. This is our North American black bear. Now, the North American black bear, a lot of people often associate with hibernating in the wintertime. But just like Elise mentioned with the raccoon, it is an animal that goes into a state of torpor. So the bear will spend most of the late summer and early fall into the late fall eating a lot of different food and fattening up for wintertime. They're omnivores. It's very similar to the raccoon. So they eat meat and plants and berries and nuts. They eat about 50-50 of each. So they are really true omnivores. A lot of people think that they use these big claws and their big sharp teeth to hunt animals, but they're actually mainly scavengers. They may take a sick or injured animal, but most of the time they're looking for something that's already dead that they can scavenge. So they'll graze on any carcasses that they can find. berries, nuts, grasses, and especially in areas where we have a lot of agriculture, like in Pennsylvania, they will eat a lot of corn out of the farmers' fields in the fall. So they're going to build up a lot of fat stores for the winter when they go into torpor. Now, black bears, they find either a large place underneath the roots of a tree, maybe underneath a little rock outcropping. Sometimes they'll dig burrows. If they find a large hollow tree trunk, they might even find somewhere in there, and that's where they go to spend most of the winter. And as we mentioned, torpor is a seasonal kind of variant of hibernation. So they will not stay asleep the entire winter, and they won't shut their bodies down almost completely. But they're just kind of in a elongated, deeper sleep. If the weather gets warmer, black bears may leave their dens or wherever they've decided to call home for the winter, go out, look for food, and check out their surrounding areas. If there's danger, they can still, be woken up quite easily to either escape or defend themselves. Male and female black bears will find separate dens, and the pregnant females, when they go into the den, can give birth in the den throughout the winter, and her and the cubs will spend the winter together inside the den. So I'll give you a close look at the North American black bear here. And then we'll take a quick look at its skull, just so you can see the really powerful jaw that these have. You can see the flat teeth in the back, just like our molars and our mouth, and the sharp teeth up front, just like our canine teeth, because humans are omnivores and black bears are omnivores. So our dentition is actually very similar. So that's the North American black bear, and we're going to go back to Ranger Elise for our next animal.
So here is our next animal. So you can see if you can take a guess what animal this is. It's the color of its fur may help you to identify it. But this is the red fox. And the red fox is an animal that toughs it out or adapts to the winter and is active all winter long. So you can see this red fox has a really, really fluffy, warm fur. And the red fox in wintertime grows an even thicker fur so that it can keep warm. And it has this giant bushy tail that is mostly just fur. And the red fox, as opposed to some of the other animals in our area that will den or take shelter, they actually like to kind of sleep out in the open. And their fur is warm enough that it can protect them and keep them warm when they sleep. And they use this giant fluffy tail almost like a blanket. So whenever they curl up, they can cover their face or their nose with it to keep warm. I'll show you a picture of the red fox. And in the picture, take a look at how big the red fox's ears are. And this helps the red fox to hunt. So they are really excellent hunters, and they are hunting throughout the winter because they are awake in the winter time. And their skull is here, and you can see their teeth are a little bit sharper than some of the teeth that we just looked at. Their teeth in the back are pretty sharp, sharper than maybe the bear or the raccoon. And while the red fox is an omnivore, it prefers to eat meat, and in the wintertime, it is definitely hunting meat. And their large ears help them to hunt. They can actually hear small mammals that are running under the snow. They hunt using a pounce method, so they will sneak up on their food and then kind of jump up into the air and land on top of it. And you can actually see pictures or video clips of foxes jumping and sticking their head down into the snow, and it's just their hind legs and their tail that is sticking out of the snow whenever they are hunting those mammals. So the red fox is very well adapted to live in the cold temperatures of our area. And we'll go back to Ranger Braden to learn about our next animal.
So we've been talking about a lot of different mammals that live around here that do different changes and adaptations for wintertime. The next animal we're going to talk about is not a mammal. It's a reptile. And we just have its skin today. This is a black rat snake skin. Normally, we would have our educational animal, Mr. McSlithers, if you've seen him in some of our videos before. But because it is wintertime, Mr. McSlithers is staying nice and warm inside his enclosure today. And unfortunately, he can't join us. But this is actually his last shed that he left for us. It's about 5.5 feet long because black rat snakes are the largest snake in Pennsylvania. So they get the longest out of any of the snakes. You will see them in the summertime all about lounging around a lot of the times in roadways, absorbing the summer heat because they are cold-blooded. So that's a really important distinction. All of the mammals that we talked about today are warm-blooded and can generate their own body heat, which is a big advantage for surviving in cold climates. Snakes and all reptiles are cold-blooded. They can't generate body heat. So they have to find some place in the wintertime that they can stay warm to a level where they're not going to suffer the negative impacts from the cold weather. So snakes will go into a period of what is called brumation, which is very similar. It's a type of torpor. So they will go just like the bear and the raccoon into kind of a semi-dormant state. They'll find a place that has a very steady temperature year-round, which is usually underground. If they can find a crevice, maybe wiggle their way in down below the frost line next to a house. Some might even tuck into tree stumps deep inside the tree. And they'll find a nice place that stays at around 50 degrees throughout the entire year. They will den up with other snakes of the same species, so you may find multiple black rat snakes all together in the same den. But black rat snakes are also known to cohabit dens with other snakes like the copperhead. So you can find sometimes two species together, keeping all the bodies together. And even though they don't make their heat, it gives them a little bit more insulation from the cold weather. We'll show you a picture of our black rat snake here. And then when the weather gets warm out again, we will bring out Mr. McSlithers for some programs. So keep your eyes out for maybe Mr. McSlithers live in the springtime. And Elise is going to take you to our next animal.
So for this animal, I'm going to start off by showing you its skull. So you can notice it's a little different than some of the skulls that we have seen so far. So this one has a pretty large, sharp beak, and specifically you can notice how big the eye sockets are on the skull. So this is our great horned owl. And the great horned owl gets its name from these feather tufts on the top of its head. And a lot of people think that those are the owl's ears, but they actually are just tufts of feathers that people thought looked like horns. So that is why we call it the great horned owl. And owls are excellent hunters. So their eyes are so large like this because of their excellent eyesight. So we can turn our eyes in our socket. So if I wanted to look towards Ranger Braden, I can kind of shift my eyes from side to side, but the owl's eyes are locked forward, which is why the owl turns its head so much, because it can't move its eyeballs. And that helps them to be able to see so well at night whenever they are hunting. And the great horned owl is active all throughout the winter as well. So they actually mate in late December and into early January, and they can give birth in late February. So they are mating and can possibly be raising their young in the winter. And they are hunting those small mammals and small rodents. They prefer to hunt in a woodline and then swoop down into an open field to capture their prey. So you can listen for the hoo-hooing of the great horned owl at night throughout the wintertime to see if there are any in your area. And now Ranger Braden is going to go ahead and share our last animal with you.
So our last animal that we have today is a very special one that we've brought with us. And it is sitting right here next to me. I hope you've all been enjoying his presence throughout the entire presentation. This is another large rodent that we have. This one is not semi-aquatic, though. You will find it in large grassy fields in the summertime and in the fall, but you won't see it in the wintertime at all. And that's because this is a groundhog. And groundhogs are one of the true hibernators. So groundhogs will spend their entire winter in a deep state of dormancy. Groundhogs are pretty neat. They make massive burrows. They can be anywhere from 6 feet long up to over 80 feet long. And inside these burrows, they have multiple tunnels and they have different rooms. Some of them are for nurseries, some are for waste, and other places are for sleeping or hibernation. So the groundhog, as a true hibernator, it goes through some very drastic body changes. Its body temperature will drop from around 90 degrees down to almost 40 degrees. And that's very cold. We couldn't survive if our body temperature dropped down to 40 degrees. We have to maintain a constant high body temperature up in the high 90s to stay healthy. But the hibernation period, its body temperature drops, its metabolism drops, and its heart rate drops from over 100 beats per minute down to 4 beats per minute. Imagine if your heart only beat one time every 15 seconds. So because its body can cool down, its heartbeat can slow, all of that extra weight it put on in the late summer and early fall allows it to slowly burn that stored fats up and stored energy up over the winter, and it be able to hibernate until springtime. So we usually see them start to disappear around the middle of October, and even in the early, some stay out to the early parts of November, and they will stay until the early spring underground in their burrows. Now they can wake up from that hibernation to warm up or move around, but usually they're going to stay pretty still throughout the entire winter. One of the other neat things about groundhogs is in Pennsylvania, we have a holiday coming up that celebrates groundhogs. So on February 2nd, we celebrate Groundhog's Day every year. And that's been originally starting out as a Pennsylvania Dutch tradition, but has gone into a tradition that's celebrated all over the United States and through different parts of the world since 1887 in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, when the first official Groundhog Day was held. So keep your eye out, and maybe we'll see if Punxsutawney Phil sees his shadow in the next couple of weeks and lets us know if we are going to have 6 more weeks of winter, or if we might get lucky and it's an overcast day like today, Phil might not see his shadow, and we'll be looking forward to spring coming up soon. So that's all the animals that we have to explore today. Now, we'd like to take some time, and if anyone asked us any questions, we're going to answer those questions for you now. So feel free to type in your questions. And if people have already put in questions, we'll get to those while everybody else is typing.
All right. Our first question is, are there any bears in the Allegheny County parks?
Yeah, there are bears in the Allegheny County parks. But it might not be in all 9 parks all the time. Bears do move around, but we have definitely found evidence of bears, and people have taken pictures of bears in some of our parks. While we have found bear scat or bear droppings in Boyce Park, we found them in Settler's Cabin. Folks have taken pictures and actually seen bears in Round Hill Park. So there's bears all around Allegheny County. Their populations are increasing in the state of Pennsylvania and Allegheny County, so they're starting to move into the area more and more. So keep your eyes open when you're out in the parks. You have a pretty good chance, maybe not a pretty good chance, but you do have a chance of seeing a bear here.
Our second question is, do snakes get fat in the winter?
I don't think that snakes are going to gain any weight in the wintertime because they are experiencing a period of dormancy. So they are, if anything, they're going to lose weight during the wintertime.
Another question is, how long is the groundhog's tail?
Well, we can see a little bit of his tail right here. And it's not very long. It's only about 6 inches long or so. So they've got little stubby, fluffy tails. And if you're looking to see groundhogs in the summertime when they do come out, if you come out to our parks, they're just about everywhere. Even if you live in a suburban neighborhood or even an urban neighborhood, if there's an area of grass, you oftentimes find groundhogs. So take a look in big open fields. One of the best spots in Boyce Park where we are today is on the ski slopes in the summertime.
Anne says, thank you for doing this. The kids are watching it.
Great, we hope you
Good.
enjoyed it.
Another question is, how big is the biggest bear in our county?
In our county, I'm not sure. On average, bears can go anywhere from the 200 to 300 pound mark for an adult. Large North American black bears in Pennsylvania can go over 800 pounds. So we actually have some of the largest black bears in the United States in the state of Pennsylvania.
That was our last question, unless anyone else has questions.
Great. Well, if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to type them now. But if you'd care to join us, we are doing, the Allegheny County Parks offers activities and programs year round. So you might be taking advantage of snow tubing, snowboarding, or skiing at the Boyce Park ski slopes right now, ice skating at the North Park and South Park ice rinks, or even hockey. We offer guided hikes, owl prowls, junior ranger programs, animal adaptation programs, all throughout the winter. And then in the spring and summer months, we'll be changing our programs up to make them more seasonally appropriate. So in the next few months, you might see Signs of Springs programs, wildflower programs going on in the spring, and then in summer, kicking off with some of our stream studies and other summer hikes. So if we don't have any other questions, we'd like to thank you a lot for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed learning about